Sure, thank you. It's a pleasure to share with you. My name is Maria Stella Rognoni, and I'm also from the University of Florence, political science, and there I teach history and politics of contemporary Africa. Sure. As my colleague Alberto Tonini already said, I think that the perspective of historians we think can add something to the project. In my case, being focused on, in particular, sub-Saharan history allows me to give to the project maybe another look, a different look to the very core of migration. We are used to think migration in European terms. In fact, the same issues have a different weight for sub-Saharan countries, and both in terms of people migrating from those countries to Europe, but also in terms of the institutions involved. We came last week, so we're at the beginning of our staying in Granada, but already from the first day, everyone here, our colleagues have been extremely helpful. We managed to take a tour in Granada. We saw the Norte neighborhood. We had wonderful explanations by Paula in particular. So coming here, we really have the impression that we can grasp things that we could not think about before coming. So it's really a unique opportunity not only to embrace what is migration, how migration is felt here in Granada, but also to share thoughts with colleagues. So it is a very precious opportunity.
Yeah.
I think there are many connections in the sense that that project looks for understanding issues related to humanitarian aid in history within the Mediterranean context. So how humanitarian aid was developed by countries in Southern Europe during a long period of time, starting from the end of the Second World War up to today. And of course, humanitarian aid is somehow linked to migration issues. It is a specific approach, but it is certainly related, and also the countries that are studied are in a way the same countries that are particularly affected by migratory issues nowadays. So there are certainly connections.
Project.
This is a huge question. Well, I think that exactly because of the situation we're living in, and because of the conflicts we are indirectly experiencing so far, the idea that Europe is no longer the center of the world and what Europe thinks, or the different policies implemented by European countries, are only part of the global scenario, and more we have as Europeans to listen to other views. I think that projects like Global Answer are exactly a possibility to open our mind, including ideas that are not only shaped by the concerns of Europeans, as Alberto Tonini was saying before, for instance, perceiving migration only from a security point of view, but creating these connections, we embrace other perspectives. So I think that, and I hope that the terrible situation that we are all experiencing will ultimately help us to learn more, to listen to other concerns. For instance, from an African perspective, I know for sure that migration is perceived in a different way, only because, for instance, the numbers of African migrants into Europe are really a small percentage of the numbers much bigger that actually are involved within African migration within African countries. So African countries are asking Europe, why are you so concerned about migration, whereas we sustain millions of African migrants? So you see, the perspective is different, and we as Europeans need to embrace also what Africa is telling us, for instance, only talking about Africa. Again, I very much agree with what have been said before. Professor Tonini underlined, in fact, the continuity within different governments in Italy, meaning that migration has been tackled by different governments pretty much in the same way, and that is mainly through the lens of security and no longer through the lens of opportunity. And this, of course, has something to do with not necessarily migration, but with other internal concerns. For instance, the worries by political parties to have enough consensus, and migration is that very issue that tends to create a consensus around concerns that I don't know, affect the idea that increasing number of migrants might eventually be a problem for our societies, instead of thinking that, for instance, our societies are aging very much. We do need to enlarge and consider the coming of people from outside Europe, for instance. But these thoughts are never talked about. So that's why we see continuity between leftist governments and right-wing governments. So there is really a need to change the narrative also, how migration is really talked about, and not only about the laws that are implemented, but really the mentality of the people. So the project like ours, I think it's also very important for just understanding how we live through these narratives. I think that at least in terms of what universities can do, we have the idea of working together, being part of the same European Union, and this is very important, especially because at the level of governments, of course we are all Europeans, but governments tend more and more in the last years to put forward policies that are no longer conceived as European policies, but are very much tailored around national problems. Instead, we should really try to go back to our fathers of European Union and put forward, as I said, a different understanding of something that should not be perceived as a problem, but as a fact of our life. I would not even talk about migration, but mobility. So working together as different universities, different associations in Europe, I think is again an opportunity to put a little bit of a pressure and also to again listen and try to enlarge our general understanding of the issues that we worked on.